Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Self Employed, the Forgotten Community. Let me ask you something. How many times have you said yes this week when you knew you should have said no? Yes to a client that didn't feel right, to work outside your lane, yes to a price that didn't sit well, yes to something that drained you, and in the moment it felt easier. But every time it costs you. Today's episode is simple but incredibly powerful. Stop saying yes to everything. Hi, Dan, how are you?
Oh my God. It's one of those episodes like, how long have you got on that one? And,
Absolutely.
um, and you know what I found as well, Dan, over the years? You know the way you take on a client, you take it, you practically don't like them, but you took it on for the money, you know. Now this doesn't, you know, we're different businesses out there, like if you're in retail, you like this probably doesn't apply. But in the service industry, you take on a client, th- you really must monitor it. Every time I took on a client for the money, right, it nearly goes wrong all the time because there's a list of things, and I have a list here of, have you ever dealt with a client that they want a quick fix, they want a cheap rate, they want it now, they don't respect your time or expertise, they don't listen, they pay late, if at all, they have no loyalty, they're constantly firefighting, and truth be told, they're only in business for the money, right? They are in business for the money. They have no cause or purpose. They just want to, oh, there's great money in there, right? And every time stood in front of a crowd and I threw all those questions at them, how many here have clients like this? And I read all that out again, right? Most of the room puts up their hands, right? And what I find is, back in the day, you know, I remember, Dan, you and I preaching this 15 years ago, right? A lot of people say, yeah, Dan's, yeah, 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 right? But what I find in the last 5 years, that if you don't stop saying yes to everything, they could actually close your business. And now that's a strong statement, but I'd be really adamant about that
Yeah.
I have seen businesses choking because of this.
Yeah, and let's be honest about it, I suppose, Dan. Most people don't say yes because they want to. They say yes because they don't want to lose that opportunity, or they're worried about cash flow, or they want to be liked, or they don't want to disappoint a friend or a colleague, or they're afraid that the next opportunity won't come along. And so they say yes, even when it doesn't feel right. And saying yes, and you know this as well as I do, saying yes often feels safe in the moment, but then suddenly it becomes very expensive over time. And every time you say yes to the wrong thing, you're saying no to the right thing. And the cost shows up in ways people don't always see because, like, what you start to do is, you know, time drained on low value work, energy pulled in the wrong direction. And I know it myself because it's happened to me. You then start to get frustrated with clients. You're working with lower margins, and then you get scope creep and less space for better opportunities because the when you say yes to every single thing, and I only saw it myself the other day here in my own office, where someone rang and on the other end of the line, like, it was a question of, we need this and we need it by Wednesday. And the temptation is to say yes, even with today is Tuesday. And in the back of your mind, you saying, God, it might be a good opportunity, but deep down inside, you know that it is going to give you scope creep, and frustration builds in, and it builds in amongst even yourselves because you could potentially start to argue with your fellow workers about, oh, we got to make this deadline and it's not going to happen because we said yes when we should have said no. And of course, the big one for me, Dan, is, if you keep saying yes to everything, you move further away from the lane that you're in, because the wrong yes creates the wrong business, and therefore you start shifting out of that lane. And we talk an awful lot about, finding that lane and staying on that lane.
Yeah. And I find, yes, even yesterday now, that I was working with a client and there were 140,000 out. They had, some of it was 30 days, so that was okay. More of it was 60 days. But there was a good 40-50% of it was gone over 90 days. And it was down to wrong target market, wrong type of client. Now, that's what I keep saying, that wrong client, they create bad cash flow. They really scupper that. They also don't allow you look after the good client because they will take all your time, they'll take all your energy, they'll take all your resources, and you are compromising servicing the good client. I had an auctioneer, still a client of mine, and they really trimmed it all up, especially in the property maintenance side of their business. They really did a spring clean there this year, and they identified their ideal market was busy, self-employed professionals that respect other people that are self-employed. And they were the type of people, A and B clients, we call them. And they were the type of client who would say, look, Dan, go away and do it. If you need to put in a new kitchen in that apartment there, just go away and do it. That type of client. Because the others were putting barriers in the way every way they turned, and they were taking up all their time. And the wrong target market also really hits cash flow. And they choke your business.
Yeah. And like we all start out in business, so we have a clear idea of what we want to do, Dan, and we establish our vision and our mission statement, which is really, really important. And then we start working on our target market and we're working with some of our clients. But then one of those clients asks you, will you do just one more thing? Even though it doesn't fit within your mission statement, and you take on the work outside your expertise, and then you start to adapt to it, and then before long you're too busy, you're not aligned, and then you're working hard at something that you're not an expert in, then you stop progressing. And when you start using yes, I believe you start losing direction. And I suppose we all feel it's difficult to say no, particularly to a good client or maybe a friend or a colleague, but you have to say no when you need to say no. Otherwise, you're going to go on a tangent and you're going to go around. You're going to be running around chasing things where you don't have the expertise in that field.
Yeah, and I also find as well that as self-employed people, we have this mindset that we need to be busy all the time. We need to be up the walls. I don't know who came up with this statement, up the walls. It's like a badge of honor. You don't have to go away and walk a dog, and what I'm finding is that people that are extremely busy, right? It stops their growth. It stops them getting new clients because they have no time to think. I have often found here that I get the dog and off I go to the beach and I do an hour walk there. I'll make more progress on my business walking the beach than I would back in the office. And, I now I have a mindset because I was one of those people. Are you busy then? Oh, I'm up the walls. Oh my God. Badge of honor. Now it's the very opposite. Are you busy then? Control busy. I work 3.5 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Because I stopped saying yes to everything. And then I noticed as well that saying to people, when they're marketing, I said, do you want more clients? Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I said, no, hold on a minute. Do you want more clients or better clients? And then they all stop and they go, "Well, yeah, actually, better clients."
And that's yeah, and of course that brings it around then to don't say yes to everything, and start saying yes to the right clients and the right type of work that you want to do, and start saying yes to the right opportunities. And if your business is aligned and you know what lane you're in, then you'll know when to say yes to those right opportunities. The things that align with your strengths and the things that align with your values, start saying yes to those, and start thinking about what makes your business move forward, and start saying yes to those. Ask yourself, does it fit in my lane? Does it energize or drain me? And we talk about this all the time, Dan, and you mentioned it at the outset, saying yes to everything can really, really drain you. And, if you sit back, go for a walk. I go for a walk at lunchtime every day, but when you go for a walk, you can start to make sense for where you want to go. And then you're going to start saying yes to the right things, because, not every opportunity is a good opportunity.
Yeah. And also, I suppose people listening to this episode will say, all right, okay, but how do I attract the good client? Always say, we've often spoke about when we're doing training about building your brand and all that. And you'll see half the room like with their eyes rolling, like and going, oh my God, here we go again. Build your brand. But if you enhance your brand to say that you're the best within your lane, you're the best at what you do, and you charge accordingly, you will filter out the people that are looking for a deal, they're looking for it yesterday, all that. You will filter those out because they will say, well, no, they're too dear, right? There is nothing wrong with being, I won't say too dear, but don't be the cheapest. Don't, and if you're trying to win business and you're trying to win business and by cutting prices, you're in big trouble.
Yeah,
That's when you walk into trouble.
yeah, you're on a race spiraling downwards, because you cannot you can't be successful or have a successful business if you keep cutting prices just to do or to beat your competitor, or to cover turnover, or or whatever the case. Like, you've got to say no to those type of things. Price should never be an issue. As you rightly said, your value is what you should be charging. What value does your company have to the clients that you're dealing with? Or, to turn it another way, how does your client feel after they've dealt with you? And if they feel that they've received value at a fair price, then they're the right type of client. And don't and if someone, like, many's the time someone come to our reception and they say, oh sure, such and such a company can do it for 10 euros less. And our attitude always is, well, maybe you should go to that other company, but, like, that's our price, and we're gonna stick with that price.
I had a great example a couple of years ago then of perceived value, right? I had two hotels up the West Coast, okay? And they were both of them very reliant on the wedding industry. Now, these two hotels, there was 1 mile between the two of them. They were both on the coast, 1 mile between the two of them, right? One of the hotels, the bride and groom would pay on average 2 grand more on the day than they would for the other one. Now, there was nothing wrong with any of the two hotels, okay? But the second hotel would do maybe 25 weddings a year. The more expensive hotel was doing 150 weddings a year. And they were more expensive. It was harder to get in there. So I sat down with the wedding coordinator and the sales manager one day, and I said, like, how do you actually do that? The bride and groom know they're going to pay more to ye, and you're getting 3 and 4 times the amount of weddings. They said, when we are charging, we say for beef, they actually would bring the bride and groom into the storeroom and say, right, this is why we're charging for this. Because see that beef there? That's tomorrow's wedding. Do you see the beef over there? That's next Saturday's wedding. So we have to install good cold rooms, everything. And that is why we are charging extra for our beef dish. Every 100% conversion, because people could see why they were paying extra. And I think that is a lesson we could all learn. That it's not about price, but you need to show why you're more expensive than the next person. And if they see that, they are a good client. If you get a client to go and say, I don't care how long you have been hanging, I'm not going to pay that price. So wrong client.
Yeah, and I suppose where people really struggle then is they know they should say no, but they don't know how to, and they like, and I suppose here's a simple approach. Number one, be clear, not apologetic, because how many times you say, you hear people, they're apologizing and they're trying to say no, and the fact that they're apologizing as they're trying to say no really means that maybe they should be saying yes. You don't need to over explain. That you don't have to. You could say something simply like, that's not something we focus on, but I can point you in the right direction. Or be in a position where you can offer an alternative. Refer someone. Refer maybe possibly your competitor. Suggest another solution by saying, look, we don't focus on that particular area, but I think this company do. It might be worth giving them a shot. And what you're doing is you are then being clear and concise about that the fact that this is not the type of work that you want, or this is not the type of client that you want, but you're pointing them in the right direction in a nice, non-apologetic way, if that makes sense.
It does. And the other thing I found as well lately, what I started doing with some clients is, the way we create workflows? So you get inquiries in from all your different marketing strands, in from LinkedIn and Facebook and all that, and then referrals and your BNI chapter or whatever, right? And all those details come into a CRM. And then what happens after a CRM? Then you maybe a follow-up email, then a follow-up phone call and all that. But over the years, we looked at that slot after the CRM as the slot there where you follow up an email, then you follow up a phone call to win the business. But now what we've done is you into the CRM, follow up email, follow up phone call to filter the business. And it was a complete shift. It isn't about making the phone call to win that business. It's making a phone call to filter the business. And how do you stop the wrong target market? Is you really concentrate on your brand and you do the best you possibly can to service your good client. Usually that is, don't cut your costs, because something has to give. You might have to take, if you cut your costs, you might have to cut your staff. That means then that your staff per client ratio is completely diminished.
Yeah.
The client are now getting a bad service.
Yeah, and I think you've got to trust that better opportunities will come, and you talk about the mindset, and like this is the mindset shift, and here's what happens then when you start to say no more often, you get more control back, and you start to attract better clients. You protect your own time, you protect the time of your staff, and you start to increase your value. And you spoke about perceived value. People respect clarity because they feel it, and if you're clear about the value that you offer, your clients that you want to attract, they'll feel that. It's so important that you get that mindset shift.
Yeah, it is. And I think also it's very important to stop and identify who is a good client for me? What are the clients? Who are the clients I need to attract? Where do they hang out? As in, what social media platforms will I find them on? You know, is there another referral partner that deals with these type of clients that I'm not dealing with? Them? Work with them. There's loads of ways of doing it. And even like I know we said this in a previous episode of our podcast, is even if 70% of your clients are not the right target market, bring it down to 30, but bring up the others to 70. You know, have 70% of your client base the right target market.
Yeah.
I find that, Jesus, if worst comes to worst, you could handle 30% of your clients being the wrong target market, but you'll never handle 70. And there's a lot of business out there like that.
Absolutely. Dan, the last 22 minutes, we've been talking about something really, really important. And that's, that stop saying yes to everything. And, so if you're out there today and you're feeling stretched, if you're working hard but not moving forward, or if your business feels heavier than it should be, then take a look at where you're saying yes. Because sometimes the biggest change you can make in your business is not what you start doing, it's what you stop accepting. So this week, try this simple thing: pause before you say yes. Ask yourself, does it align? Does it make sense? And if it doesn't, say no. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with another business owner who's taking on too much, or who thinks they're saying yes is when they should have been saying no. Because the goal isn't to do more, the goal is to do what matters and do it better. Dan, this podcast has flown talking about the subject, but until our next podcast, we'll talk to you again. Goodbye, Dan.
Yes, I'm going to walk the dog. Thanks, everyone. Good luck.